Oops. Thank you. I never know. Always want to make sure that we record. But hello, everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your morning or afternoon with us as we get into our monthly community of practice call. This month of February, we're going to be centering our conversation around using data to support applications for federal funding. Again, this is our GEM community of practice, and GEM is our GreenLink equity map, and we're super excited to have y'all. So feel free to say hey in the chat, let us know where you're calling in from, or let us know about what you're excited to talk about today. Okay, so just to level set, and I think that there's a lot of just new faces on this call, so welcome and thanks for joining us. But this is our community of practice. It is a monthly space where we get the opportunity to connect with people who are really just like dedicated to climate equity and using data and the relationships in order to advance it. So it's a really great group. We're all like, yes, equity, which I love. But we also dive into tons of different learning topics. And so whether that's peer consultations that we do as a group, we also do tons of just different topics. We did, just to give you an idea of some of the work that we've talked about last year, we've talked about building an equity index and what that looks like, best practices for co-creation and working with communities and intersecting communities and cities work. But we also talked about our process guide, which is a really great tool, which we'll have Mina drop that in the link for us as well. But we cover tons of different topics, and we hope to even expand that list this year through all of our community of practice calls this year. We have about over 600 members that are a part of this group now. So we are rapidly growing, which is really good. GEM has been around for a little over a year. So I think that's pretty good that we have such a great group of people and of experts who are eager to get into this equity space. But what we like to make sure that we keep in mind is that data is amazing. That's great. We lean on it a lot in the sector, but it doesn't tell us the whole story. And so tools like GEM helps us to do that because it connects not only the data side of things, but also that co-creation and getting cities and community-based organizations involved and able to use that data for good. So that is our community of practice. Let's see. Next slide. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to Mina to talk about our national core team.
Yeah, we just wanted to give a shout out, and I see some names from our core team here. I saw Divya join us. Thank you. So we've got a great group of folks who have been helping us steer the ship for a couple years now. And these are folks on this list, and they've just been providing guidance and insight and helping us really ground truth a lot of the stuff that we're trying to learn, both to create the GEM equity maps and have them be relevant and accurate, but also what are the gaps that these maps might still leave, and how do we address those, and how do we continue to advance climate equity using this tool and make it as ground truth it and make it as relevant as possible. So we just want to say thank you to these folks, and you'll be seeing Shai today. She'll be sharing with us some of the great work that she's doing using GEM to apply for federal funding. And a bunch of these other folks will show up throughout the year to provide their expertise. And so thank you for those of you who are here, and you'll hear more from these great people.
Thanks, Mina. Shout out to our core team. All right, so just to give you all an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to get into just an overview of Biden's administration's commitment to equity in federal funding specifically. I know people have probably heard a little bit of what's going on, but probably there's still tons more to learn about and know really what's going on right now as far as the commitment to equity for federal funding and what that even looks like. So we're actually going to also get into a panel session with Shai and John, who are both going to be talking to us and actually answering a few panel questions about their experience and how they actually use GEM in order to apply for federal funding. So super excited for that. And then we'll have the opportunity to explore and learn about the different different ways that you can use GEM in your applications that you have coming up in the future. So we'll do a GEM demo and show you how to download the data, how to grab screenshots, and really even just talk about what type of data you may want to consider using for your applications in the future. After that, we'll do what we always do. We'll wrap up and we'll share tons of different resources that we have, whether it's how you can get access to GEM, how you can learn more about the community of practice, and even view previous recordings from the community of practice as well. So that's the agenda. It's jam-packed, but I'm confident that we will get through tons of great information and learn about how we can use GEM for our federal funding. All right, so now I'm actually going to pass it over to Matt Cox, who is our founder and CEO of GreenLink Analytics, and he's actually going to tell us what in the world we need to know about Biden administration's commitment to equity. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Matt.
All right. I'll try to keep it short and sweet so we can hear more from the people who are doing the work. But the Biden administration announced their Justice 40 initiative, their J40 initiative that's trying to address equity issues on a bunch of fronts, but primarily looking at things like labor, climate, environmental justice, trying to bring all of those together and bringing what they're calling, an all of government approach to it. In their initial outreach around this, they highlighted 21 pilots that they were standing up and that they were pushing forward in terms of like federal work streams where they could reorient the government towards things. But coming out of the major funding bills that were passed in the past year or so, there's been a lot of activity and dollars put towards this that's trying to be aligned with the J40 executive orders. So I tried to run down a couple of different ways that we might see that. If we're looking at dollars that have been earmarked so far between ARP, the infrastructure bill, just those two. So the two that have actually already passed. There's about $350 billion that's earmarked specifically just for local actions that could come through these kinds of applications. If you look at everything that could possibly apply, so you might partner with a state agency or an actor that works more at that state level, that number grows to $725 billion that could potentially be accessed through partnerships. So there's a lot of money, and people are trying to figure out now, how do we spend this? Now it's been allocated. How do we make sure that the J40 goals and targets that are in the executive order are actually achieved? So there's a hunger in the applications to see alignment here. So my also kind of on the count here, and I'm referring in this case to a document that WRI put together that was trying to track the different funding resources. There were over 180 existing funding opportunities that have been announced since ARP itself was passed. So there's a lot that's coming out, and it's coming out from all over the place. So just as like a quick review, you've got Department of Education, Department of Energy, EPA, Labor, Transportation, USDA, HHS, like they're all putting stuff out there that has funding that was supported here, that they are looking for unique ways to make it so that their funding opportunity is aligned with the J40 goals. And so I think that's a bit more what we're going to talk about here, is how to make sure that those proposals do speak better towards those aims. Hopefully that was short enough.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was really helpful just to get a better landscape of what in the world is going on and where these dollars are even coming from. But that sounds like a lot of money committed to equity. So I'm pretty sure that we are very enthusiastic about that. So thank you. Awesome. All right. So as we move on, I actually want to pass it over. I'm going to pass it over to our panelists. So we have Cheyenne Flores from the City of Philadelphia, and we also have John Patty from the CETA, which is also the Community and Economic Development Association, which is located in Chicago. And both of these people and their teams have done a really great job at actually using GEM to support and to apply for federal funding. And so I thought that, well, what better way than to have them come in and talk about their experiences and learn about, what they found was helpful and really what data they use in GEM in order to do that. So we're actually going to transition over to our panelists. Thank you both so much for being here. I'm going to do a stop share so that we can actually pin both of you so that we can see and get our panel started. Are you able to do the?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Shy, hey Shy.
Yes.
Will you do a quick intro, Shy, while we get John set up?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everyone. Here in Philly, we are having 64-degree weather. So I don't know if others are having kind of a heat wave, so to speak. I'm not super mad about it. I'm not gonna lie, it feels really good. But it's always in the back of your head. Why is it so warm? So I'm Shy, or Cheyenne. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for the Office of Sustainability for the City of Philadelphia. My main role and programs that I run include initiatives to address the heat disparity that we have in our city. Some neighborhoods can be 22 degrees hotter than other neighborhoods, depending on where they are located. And also in addressing / responding to the very high energy burden that Philly is experiencing. We have one of the highest energy burdens in the nation, as well as one of probably the highest poverty rate of the 10 largest cities in the nation. So we're dealing with a couple of very serious issues that are overlapping, and I'm seeing everyone pulling in the temperature that's going on in different places. So wow, high 70s. But yeah, so that's just a little background on, some of the work that we're pursuing right now. So we sort of started out in a more broad effort that was triggered by this data around the heat disparity in the city, and also understanding where those disparities come from, right? Racism, sexism, genderism, ableism, all the bad isms, a legacy of extremely just racist beyond compare policies such as redlining, but many others that are unique to the East Coast and even in Philly. So a lot of those have led to very serious environmental issues, such as the heat disparity. And we also have one of the highest asthma rates in the country. So we sort of had this obsession with place-based design, and we were more thinking about outdoor solutions, right? Public spaces as gateways to public health. Right. And that could be, in greenery, in access to resources, and in sort of smart city design, right? The 15-minute city, getting everything you need within 15 minutes of where you live. But with the onset of COVID, and with just constant feedback through the engagement that I manage, we just kept hearing that residents were more interested in solutions that addressed their home, right? They were less interested in trees getting planted on the block, or bus shelters going up. They were very interested in those things, but they were like, even though I have interest in these things, the things that I'm desperate for, which literally are words out of many folks' mouths, were solutions for at-home needs, right? So those really fell under home maintenance, access to resources that deal with your home in many levels, mostly around energy bills, food access. schooling and education. And all of these sort of painted this picture that we're dealing with in Philly. And we have some of the oldest infrastructure in the nation as well. Our housing is about 40 years. Really, it's 40 to 100 years older than other states. So it's also really an issue of we cannot just tear down everything and start new, but we're also getting to a point where the building bones are starting to crumble as well. So I don't know if that was enough of an intro, but I can jump in with any specific stuff around the federal funding, if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a really great intro. I think it's just so crazy to think about how COVID is still like a huge impact of just like wanting or really needing those at home, resources, or just wanting to, just think about the fact that we're at home so much more now, and how that's going to impact just like utilities and energy burden as well. So it's really great that you all centered your funding around catering better to the needs of people who essentially are at home more. So much.
Yeah. I think it triggered a conversation that was destined to happen as well. Like, not to say I'm thankful for COVID in any way, but just that the pandemic in itself really brought to light certain things to decision makers who otherwise were sort of pretending that it wasn't happening,
Yep.
So some of the funding that we decided to pursue, well, let me back up a little bit. So with this sort of change in our strategy, we also decided that the absolute first thing we had to do was to talk with people. So there was really no path forward without having a semblance of an idea of each person's unique experience, right? So we couldn't talk to every Philadelphian, unfortunately, but we pulled together some funds thanks to many people on the call here, thanks to Upright and the funder there, Kresge. We were able to be part of this wonderful coalition of folks utilizing GEM. And so first we learned about the data itself and how to walk through with GreenLink. So we're so thankful to them as well. We joined the community of practice, which has, I actually cannot quantify how much that has influenced like my career personally, but also the growth of our work in Philly. And then we started to really analyze the data, right? And we saw like, okay, yep, this is another thing that Philly is dealing with. And in addition, we're seeing the same disparities across our cities, particularly, that are reflected in the heat disparity, poverty, those two primarily, also tree access. So again, it was just like, okay, like we continuously have to respond to this. And now here's more data to show you that we have to look at people's homes because that's where they're, racking up these bills and need help to pay for them, right? The other issue, like with the data or that helped us think about the issue better using GEM, was that it might be easy for someone to think like, oh, well, if you have high energy burden, it's just because you have a low income, right? And even though, yes, it is factored into the energy burden, your income it is not the only factor, right? And we're seeing that there is something to be said around use of electricity and gas. But we also know from knowing our city, from quantitative and qualitative data, that primarily those that are more energy burdened are actually using less energy than people that are more energy burdened. And again, we're considering income in this, but so there is definitely some information that made us think about how much we actually know, if that's the best way to say that. And one of those things was like, well, what's happening in people's homes that it looks like they're using so much more when they're actually not, right? And so, it came down to, okay, well, it's got to be a big factor is going to have to be housing quality, right? That their heat and electricity is going right out the door. So they're either keeping it that way and wasting that money and not benefiting from it with thermal comfort, or they are turning up whatever they need to in order to be comfortable and safe in their homes, and therefore spending more money. I also think there is another level that I have yet to discover. But I think that it's really complex, and again, just speaks to where people were kind of corralled depending on the color of their skin and their ethnic background, and what types of houses that were available to them, right? That was so real in Phillyland, and I know so many other places in the world. And we're seeing it just like playing out, just like constantly in front of our eyes here with this particular thing. And GEM was just the thing that we needed to really paint that picture. And being able to work on it with everybody and talk with everyone about it was so helpful too with the community practice. So using that data, we did end up holding some energy burden focus groups with about 60 Philadelphians and about 10 community-based organizations. We asked many questions around, what's it like to be at home and pay bills, right? So from your comfort and your bills in the summer and winter to also your experience with like the maintenance of your home and the weatherization. How well is your home holding heat or air conditioning, right? So this was a really great opportunity to be able to talk with residents from all different backgrounds about one thing. And we kind of like standardized language, which was really helpful so that everyone was on the same page. There might've been some experts in the focus groups. There might've been some folks who were like very unsure about the topic and needed some background. So we really just like set the standards here. Okay, like this is what this word means. So that alone was a really interesting practice around energy burden. From those findings, we were able to start to develop our decarbonization policy framework. So we're working on that now, which is obviously a huge thing, especially because unfortunately our office doesn't really have anyone with much expertise in that, right? So we are learning as we go. We are learning on the fly as fast as we can. We are engaging everyone we possibly can who would know anything about this, including people who live in Philly and are paying bills. And so, yeah, we've been able to start to advance that work based on GEM and the information that we had there. So we knew we had to find some funding. So some of these federal programs or two of them that we pursued were one of the smaller J40 grants, the capacity building grant, and the larger DOE grant. Under the infrastructure bill. So that one was the WAP Innovation and Enhancement program. So that was really cool because it gave us an opportunity to pull together like a big proposal, but is still just a small piece of the policy framework that we're hoping to enact. So our program is looking to, and again, we've not been selected yet. We don't know that we're going to be able to follow through with this exact proposal in the timeline that we're hoping, but we are hoping in the next year to start developing a capacity building project with our very unique neighborhood energy centers here in Philadelphia. So they are grassroots organizations that are a network run by, or really just managed, they're self-run, but they are like managed and money is funneled to them from like HUD funds that then go through our planning development folks that then go to a nonprofit organization called Energy Coordinating Agency that does so much good work around the city. So they then coordinate those funds to the neighborhood energy centers. There's about 17 of them. So we'll be working on a capacity building grant with them. And then in addition, we are hoping to start to play with how those neighborhood energy centers can be a vehicle towards solarization and electrification in Philadelphia, as well as serving their role as energy assistance program like administers. So it's, asking a lot of them. With this process, we would be using GEM, sharing that data and information to paint the picture together, to ground source it. That's how we did it the first time, like with the residents. Does this information look right to you? Is this what you're experiencing? I will happily report 90% of them said, yep, that's what it looks like, and here's why, right? And they could share with us a lot of wisdom and knowledge that they had on their own. So we'll be doing the same thing with the neighborhood energy centers to hear from them. And then we'll be working with them about, what would it look like for you all to share about electrification solarization initiatives, and to be also potentially the home of the data collection on that front. How many houses are eligible for heat pumps if we did X and Y? How many houses need new roofs before they get X in order to put white coating on them, right? So we're kind of hoping to grow that responsibility, and of course funding and staff and everything, because we think that these are such unique resources in our neighborhood and are really the best pathway towards like neighborhood specific solutions building, and also like workforce development that directly benefits communities, right? Because if folks are already a community-based org and they hire another community member to do another task, it's still keeping within that neighborhood level that we're really trying to go for.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shai, for that really great overview. And it sounds like the proposal that you all submitted sounds absolutely amazing. I'm rooting for you all as well. But that sounds really great. And so one of the things that you mentioned was that you all have really high asthma rates there in Philly. And so I wondered, like, in using or incorporating GEM data or just equity data within the application, how did you decide, what data to include or what was most helpful to support your application? Did you include asthma data from GEM or from other sources, or how did you kind of make those decisions?
Yeah, well, I actually think energy burden, of course, for those who have been working on it and pushing that work forward, it's something they know very much about, or experts in it. But for the general public, and especially, of course, people who are not experiencing it, it's kind of a new term, right? So that's very true here for a lot of not all of them, but many decision makers here in Philly. It's, nothing crazy new, but it's sort of like, oh yeah, right, that too, and so even just being able to point to, here's the energy burden rate, and by the way, here's what energy burden is, was so big for many people. They were like not necessarily defining it like that or thinking of it like that. It was more, they love to say like cost burden. And even though absolutely valid, yep, cost burden, yeah, but we are trying to get a little bit more niche so that we can solve like a lot of issues with this main thing, right? Like we've got climate change, we've got energy in general, we've got home and housing conditions and health, all captured under energy burden. So like responding to it. So I think that was like a really interesting angle to just be able to say, by the way, this is the rate in Philly, and here's the comparison to this other huge group of cities that were analyzed, right? Even that alone was like, whoa. Being able to kind of compare that to like poverty rate, which I take issue with because it's not adequately collected, at least here in Philly. And then being able to point to exactly some of those more particular attributes with the average energy rate and showing them on a map was really important too, because one of the most important things that came out of that was eviction rate. And, we had this whole conversation with Matt and the team about that unique correlation, which is, it's not shocking. I think anybody would be able to understand that or even come up with it on their own. But again, having numbers to point to and a map with colors is really helpful to just show like a quick visual. Here's a really important finding. And that was able to throw us into the housing conversation a little bit better, which is something we've like pretty much stayed out of, which is not acceptable ever, and definitely not anymore. So I would say that is how that influenced us.
Okay, wow, that's really awesome. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just like people know it exists a little bit, but like we're beating around the bush or like forgetting like, oh yeah, housing, that is definitely related to energy burden and how old our homes are and eviction and things like that. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to unpack those layers, because sometimes that's what you have to do, especially in those type of proposals, so that they understand, yes, this is a housing issue as well as energy burden and health and everything else. So really appreciate that. And so I do want to actually open the floor to see if there are any questions from the group. So feel free to unmute yourself and see if I'll check and see if there are any questions in the chat. Mina, did you see any?
I saw that the one just came in from Atlanta right now.
Okay, I see. Can you clarify how? Yes, we can definitely talk about gym access, and that's actually what we're going to get into next. So we can definitely get into that. Before we do so, any questions for Shy and the amazing work that they're doing in Philly? All right. I think there was one
Yeah,
asking.
I see a hand up. Nicole.
Hi, Shai, I'm very excited to hear about your work. It is great to hear that you all are addressing a lot of the issues that go with energy burdens and energy justice in general. I really wanted to know about your focus group a little bit more and some of the questions that you thought were helpful to really kind of help you get the answer necessary to tell you the narrative of some of the disparities that people were experiencing in Philly.
Yeah, so full disclosure, like we have a very small team here in Philly on our Office of Sustainability. It's like when I was doing that, it was like 8 of us. So it's really small. And so, I was young, like I had not done this yet, and they sort of like let me. So a lot of it was learning on the go. I have a lot of things that I would have done differently. It's just like we should have had way more partners involved. Like that's why now I'm like partners. Like I literally will work with anyone who wants to work with me. But with that process, I developed the agendas, the equity framework, the engagement framework by myself. And so, it wasn't, more brains are better than one. But with that, some of the questions that we asked were like, if you're comfortable sharing, what is your average energy bill in the summer months? If you're comfortable sharing, what is the average energy bill in the winter months? On average, how old are your windows? How old is your hot water heater? What kind of heating do you have? What kind of cooling do you have? Do you have air conditioning? We know everyone had heating because that's a requirement here in PA and Philly, but it is not a requirement to have air conditioning. So we had to ask that question. I'm very glad to share that many people did, but on my heat resilience work, I coordinate air conditioner giveaways with a community group, and I know that many people do not have it. So that's a factor. We also ask questions about like home energy envelope, right? So I literally asked the question about on average, how long would you say does it take for the heat or cooling to leave your house? That was like, we developed these questions based on experience with talking about some of these things, but also it was like, I don't know, this is how I might ask that, So sometimes when we were talking with folks, I would rephrase things because they would show me like, no, that's not how you asked me that, So I learned a lot from the residents that I worked with too. And just to be clear, everybody was compensated for their time, both the residents and also the community-based organizations, which is it's an absolute crucial part of our equity and engagement frameworks. But yeah, so those are some of the questions in the focus groups, and I will be continuing kind of that model of starting every process with workshops and connection. I prefer connection to engagement. And making sure that's paid and leads somewhere. For us, that was difficult because I had nothing to give the residents afterwards that their thoughts and knowledge went towards. And it was frustrating for me. We're at a year later, and I don't have anything to, hey guys, remember how you did this? Now the city's enacting an air conditioner mandate or something. I want to do this. I want to do this really tangible stuff. So I'm frustrated by that. But unfortunately, that's my expertise, is talking to people and figuring out how to talk to them. And it's not so much developing this policy. So I think that will be slower. I hope I answered your question.
No, that was a great answer. And I really appreciate you going into detail in terms of like compensation, letting us know that this was a two-way engagement. Like, I think that's important, especially, practicing what you preach, really applying the framework, great embodiment. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to respond. There was a question in the chat about if I have like a glossary of terms. Now, if I was very organized, I would have. I had a few for words that we worked, I guess sort of I did, words that we worked together with residents. Like some of them, they brought me words like that they would use compared to what I was using. So we like amended together. We co-created everything together, except the agenda. I will say that was something I should have co-created with others first. So I don't really have like a perfect list, but I'm happy, like if you want to reach out to me, someone I'm sure can put my email in the chat. I do have to run it a bit, but I'm happy to talk with you about like different terms. And overall, we just felt it was really important to define energy burden. And also we had like I said, it was kind of a knowledge exchange for every meeting. So in every meeting, I would like be like, hey guys, so here are some of these questions. And then they'd like answer them when we go through, take breaks, talk, stretch together, whatever. And then I'd also be like, also, if you're interested, because you're bringing me so much, so I want to bring you something. Do you know what a heat pump is? Do you know how to weatherize your home? Do you know some low to no cost ways to weatherize your home? Okay, let's look at this infographic that I made, or let's talk about different types of renewable energy and what does that mean? Or let's talk about cooling strategies for neighborhoods. What do you guys like? What do you not like? Right. So we really tried to have that element too, which is something I hope to continue to do as we work forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shai. And I know you have to run, so I really appreciate your time. This was really great. And I'm sure her email is in the chat too. So please feel free to reach out to Shai directly. But thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye. All right, so I just want to transition over because we just heard all the amazing work that Shai and her team are doing. So I actually want to gauge you all's thoughts. How in the world are you planning to use equity data or GEM to apply for federal funding? And I'm going to have Mina actually drop a link in the chat to a poll in which you'll be able to share how exactly you plan to use equity data for your federal funding. And what you'll have to do is just copy and paste that link that she just put in there, and you should be able to access the poll. I'm going to do a screen share too, so you can see it as well. Thanks, Mina, for dropping that link in there. Okay, so we'll see these questions start to populate here. Let me know if anyone is having issues. But again, how do you plan to use GEM to apply for federal funding opportunities? We'd love to know what your thoughts are, your ideas, or if you're just like, I'm not even sure yet. That's totally okay as well. And hopefully after we do this demo of GEM, you'll have a better idea. See a few popping in here. And if the link isn't working for whatever reason, feel free to just answer it in the chat as well. I have one here to better understand what metrics federal funders are looking for. Yes, that's a really great option here. To demonstrate need for residential energy efficiency upgrades. Yes, absolutely. I'll be sharing this info to nonprofit partners. Yes, I collaborate with who are seeking funding, as I am not currently attached to a project or our organization. And not sure, or I haven't figured that out yet, but hopefully after this call, you'll have a little better idea. Helping cities to use GEM data to identify the priority communities that the Biden administration wants to receive 40% of federal funds. Yes, love that one. We have another here for interested in energy efficiency based health related pilots. Yes. In Jim, we have health data, we have asthma rates, health insurance, but we also have energy data as well. So that's definitely something that you can do in Jim to understand the relationship between energy efficiency and health. Awesome. I'll give it one more minute to see if we have any other responses in here. I know it takes a bit to type it all out. All right, looks like we've trickled down a bit. So these are really great responses, and thank you so much for participating. This is great to know. Oh, we got one more in here saying target areas for pilot programs, community outreach, and connection to resources with equity at the center. Yes, absolutely. So I'm actually going to transition over and give a quick Jim demo so that you can see how exactly you can use the tool in order to apply for your funding. 1 second, and I'll do a screen share again so that we can see how to do it. Okay, hoping everyone can still see the screen, but this is Jim, again, our GreenLink equity map. Currently in the platform, we have over 30 different indicators, 33 to be exact, and they are our equity indicators. It allows you to visualize and better understand all the different pieces of data that we have on the neighborhood level, but also on the county level as well. So we have data ranging from what the neighborhood average energy burden is, the number of households that are severely energy burdened. We have the breakdown of racial composition, asthma rates, health insurance stress, very critical. We have tons of different housing indicators in the platform as well. So housing burden, eviction rate is something that a lot of users go in and check out. Renters versus owners, that's a huge disparity there in a lot of cities, and even just housing type. And housing type gets at the single family homes versus the multifamily homes. And multifamily would include like an apartment complex, for example. But we also have income stress and lack of internet accessibility. And I can actually zoom in for us so that we can see this data on a more neighborhood and granular level. I'm zoomed in on Atlanta, but hey, if anyone has any other preferences for what cities we zoom in on, definitely let me know in the chat. And so I'm going to disable this city boundary, but you can see the data by the city boundaries as well. But I'm going to zoom in, and we're looking at Atlanta here too. So as I'm looking at the city of Atlanta, right now we just have it on neighborhood average utility burden, but I'm going to include water in here too. If you want to just look at the relationship between just gas burden, you can do that as well. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to look at all three and see what those that data looks like. So you'll see the very dark colors. Those are showing areas that are have a higher neighborhood average of utility burden. And then you'll see the more purple colors. Those are more so mid-size or medium. And then the lighter colors are indicating that there's a low neighborhood average. But what you could do, for example, in your applications is you can filter this data out so that it's only giving you, like, you can do the top 75%, for example, so that you can know which areas have the highest neighborhood energy burden. And so you can argue that, well, these are the areas that we want to focus our project around, for example, and you can say that there's obviously a dear need in these neighborhoods and in these areas because they have significantly higher total energy burden. I mean, there are some areas here that are 25% energy burden, which is very significant for a neighborhood. Another thing that you can do as well, if you are interested in the relationship between energy burden in health. So for example, Shai mentioned that they had very high asthma rates in Philly. And so if they were centering a program around the relationship between asthma and utility burden, then you would want to have both of these layers up So we have neighborhood utility burden, and we also have asthma rates on here too. And so now this will tell us which areas have not only high energy burden, but also high asthma rates as well. And so you can argue that these are the neighborhoods that need priority, or these are the neighborhoods that I want to center my project around, for example. And I'll open the legend again in case that's helpful, so that you'll know this tealish blue color are areas that have both high asthma and high energy burden as well. And again, I can do that for any of the layers within GEM. A lot of users use the racial composition. If you want to center a program around energy burden in Black neighborhoods, and then you'll be able to visualize that through GEM as well. And then again, we can do that really with any of the racial indicators within the platform too. And then one last thing that I do want to bring attention to is within GEM, we do allow you to download the data. So you'll see in the bottom right hand, it'll prompt me to download data. And I'm not sure if you can see this pop up, maybe not, but basically the data will download as a CSV file, which is basically a spreadsheet through Excel, in which you'll be able to see what the data looks like for each of the neighborhoods or census tracts. So then you can take that data and use that for additional materials or supplemental materials in your application. But it may also be even easier if you just took screenshots or JPEG files from the map as well. So if you go down to the bottom right again, you'll see it says download map. And so it will automatically download as, I think it's like a PNG file. And that's even more easier for you to include in your applications, because you can show the data behind the reason why you're choosing to do whatever project or program for your application. And I will pause right there just to see if there are any questions in the chat, or if anyone had any thoughts here. I know, Mina, you're monitoring the chat.
Yeah, Diamond, we have folks from Chicago and Cincinnati that wanted to just kind of check out what it might look like there. I also wanted to ask, when folks are interested in downloading the data and the map, what is the range that is covered? So as we can see here in Cincinnati or in Atlanta, it covered beyond the city boundary of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say someone wanted to focus a little bit closer on Southern or Eastern Atlanta. When you download the map, is it all of Atlanta, or can you pick the boundaries, or how does that look?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends on what area you are hovered over. So if you are hovering over like just Cincinnati in general, then that is the data that you're going to get. And you'll be able to see the county level for the county. I don't know the county that Cincinnati is in. And then you'll also be able to see it by the census tract level as well. So you'll be able to see all the census tracts that are within Cincinnati, but as well as the county level data too.
And we also, as you're loading up Chicago, we have a question from Kate. If you mind coming off mute to let us know what your question is.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this whole presentation. I had a question about the variables and the data. I'm just poking around in the how to use GEM page, and I was wondering about the are the 2018 and 2017 like ACS years, are those being updated regularly, or is that like a version that has to come out? I'm just wondering about if those years are still true for what's being represented in the tool as it is, and if there's a like an update that's going to happen periodically.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So yes, we update the data like as soon as we get the most recent like ACS data. Our data scientists are in there updating the data right now. And actually we are validating, I think we just finished validating the 2019 data for GEM. So right now what you're looking at is mostly 2018. That's what we're showing. But our data scientists just finished up the 2019. And so that will probably be in there like any moment at this point. So we've tried to keep it up to date, especially for a tool like this. You want to have the most recent data that you can possibly get. So it's not a static tool where it's just, this is 2018, this is it. We have people constantly in the back end updating it. Question.
And I just want to note that on one of our near-term updates, we're going to be extending the whole data set back to 2013 so that you're able to also start to look at trends over time. So you'll be able to look at 7 years worth of data once that's integrated.
Thanks for plugging that, Matt. So I've pulled up Chicago here, and right now we're just looking at the neighborhood average energy burden. We can see which areas have significantly higher energy burden, while there's a census tracking here that's about 43% for the total energy burden. But we can also see the breakdown of electricity, water, gas, in addition to the combination of it as well. And again, we can overlay this with any of our indicators within GEM. Eviction rate is a good one too. And so now it's showing us areas that have high utility burden and also high eviction rates too.
Can you open the legend again, Diamond?
Yes, I sure can.
Cool.
Here's the legend. I have a better idea. Awesome. All right. Well, I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want to also talk about the access to GEM and how to get folks in there. So I'm going to navigate back over to the slide deck. Give me one moment. We already explored GEM. All right, so I just want to talk about some next steps. So the first thing up is, if you love our community of practice calls and you want to join the next one, we do have the calls every single month. Our next one is going to be on March 24th. We will send around a registration link so that you all don't miss it. But we will also send around the recording and the slides for this call as well. You all will receive an email from us, and then the recording for this call will also be posted on our YouTube and on our website. The other thing that you can do is, if you want to book a demo, you can book a demo with my colleague, Jelly, who's here on this call as well. Maybe she can drop her email in the chat also. But if you want to just play around with GEM as well, or just do some office hours, something that you've been stuck on, you can definitely reach out to us as well. We're happy to do that. And the other thing is, we want to get you access to GEM. So currently our GEM access is available on for free access for our cities. So anyone who has a city staff email address within one of our 50 leadership cities, you are able to just go on to gem.equitymap.org and sign up for the platform right there, and we'll go ahead and approve you like the next couple of minutes after that. The other way that you can get access to GEM as well is that if you are a community-based organization, really based anywhere across the US, you are able to sign up for GEM. And so what we have through that process is, we have our application, and if your annual revenue is under $5 million, and if you are working towards equity or BIPOC led, you are able to get access to the GEM platform. For those of you who don't fall over or in either of those categories, you can still get access to GEM. Just send us an email, or you can book a demo and we can talk about what your process would look like in order to gain GEM access. I think I covered everything.
There's actually a last minute question in the chat.
Oh,
Around
yes,
data. Maybe after you're done here, we can address that at the very end.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Again, this just covers about how to get access to GEM. City staff, go on to gem.equitymap.org. CBOs, we should have dropped that link in there so that you all can get signed up. And everyone else, feel free to book a demo or office hour with us so that we can help you figure out how to get signed up for GEM. next community of practice call again is going to be March 24th. We really hope to see you all there. We plan to do a peer consultancy call, which those are always really great. We get to hear from city staff or community organizations who are doing that amazing on the ground work and learning about, how we can help them, especially being in this space. So we actually get to serve as like consultants to each other and learn from each other and pose different questions to the group. So super excited about that. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us. If you have any other questions, my email is right here. And Mina, I'm happy to answer the question that we got in the chat too.
Yeah. Great. Let's see. The question was, I just lost it. Oh, from Daniel around the data. Are you using ACS data for your stats? And if so, is it 5-year data?
Great question. So some of our data is from ACS, not all of it, like our energy burden data, that is data that we collect ourselves and that we have. And I believe our eviction data is from Princeton. So we have a few different data sources, and I can actually also drop the link in the chat so that you can see exactly where they come from. And yes, I do believe they are the 5-year average. Matt, correct me if I am wrong on that though.
Not all of it.
Okay.
So
yeah.
most of it, we're processing the 1-year information over time and making sure that they retain statistical representation so that they're still accurate information, but that we can keep up to date with what the latest is.
Thanks, Matt. Awesome. Well, do we have any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you all found this community of practice webinar to be very helpful. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or anything that you all might need. But other than that, I really hope to see everyone next month. And thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Diamond. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.